So welcome to my channel. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit your notification bell for all new videos. I wanted to dive in on some tools that I use to dissolve defensiveness. I think that everyone suffers from being defensive regardless of what it's about, whether it's just conditioning of the mindset, something that's personal to you, something you have insecurities on. We all become defensive in some type of way, and the best way I found to dissolve defensiveness is these 6 tools that I'm going to show you guys right now. Number 1, let go of being right. So I think we all want to always prove our point. We want to definitely let the person know that we are intelligent, we know what we're talking about, we have facts, it's sustainable, but the situation is sometimes you got to know when to be quiet. You got to know when the truth will speak in silence. You don't have to always announce it. You don't have to always be right, but you definitely can still have your opposition. You can still oppose, but you don't have to be argumentative and back and forth about it, because that's when the conflict really comes. And I had to learn that along the way. I definitely think that for number 1, I don't struggle with that as much. That is something that I'm actually pretty good at. I actually kind of been working on the opposite, to be quite frank, starting to speak up more, because a lot of times I let people think they're right and I know inside they're not right, and I let that can become a repetitive thing. So then people will start to think that I have like no thought, no intellectual process that goes on in here, but it's not true. So if you are the person like me, and that also comes from people pleasing, so it's another thing that coincides, not that I'm lacking intellect, but I'm just saying that number 1 for dissolving defensiveness is not always being right, because it can be quite embarrassing to also keep being argumentative and then come out wrong. And who wants to keep always trying to argue to be right and always wrong? It also can give you a reputation of conflict and argument, which will make people not want to have a conversation with you. Change your psychology is number 2, which means change your thinking of what you think the human body functions like, what they think like, how they should respond, how they should act. Change that whole concept and just have an open mind to every scenario, regardless, even if you've been through it, because 9 times out of 10 you have a completely different person, and they are definitely gonna be moving in the way that they function, and you don't know what their upbringing is, their mindset, their condition, what they're actually used to, and what they are typically like, and who tolerated it. Because sometimes you can be with somebody that's always used to arguing all day back and forth, so then when they get involved with someone who's non-argumentative, it can become it doesn't register to them because they're not used to it. So they didn't change their psychology to think like, okay, this person is not going to keep going back and forth with me. Let's try a different strategy. Let's listen. Let's pay attention. Let's understand how this person responds to conflict. So definitely not having your psychology set on what you think a human is and how they should respond. I'll give an example. So in the beginning, when I used to get defensive, I used to be involved with a lot of conflict. So I was very physical and a lot of back and forth, a lot of physical altercations. And I became more withdrawn and guarded after that, because that can be very traumatizing. Every time you are in a debate with someone or a disagreement, you have to get physical. So when it comes to that type of scenario, I became more shut down-ish. And then that's when it became another problem, because now people think I don't have a voice. They can run over me, which then made me become a ticking time bomb, because then I would let so much pile up before I blow up and then become that person in the beginning where, we throwing hands, or we're arguing, or we're doing whatever the situation is that is not the best way to solve, basically. So I had to learn to definitely not judge the psychology of human function, and definitely don't even judge mine, because I definitely need to talk to myself too before I start to get defensive or get defensive off your defensiveness. So it's always a constant conversation with yourself. Number 3 is using a code word. So an example, some people think this is dramatic, you shouldn't have a code word. I actually agree depending on the circumstances of the relationship. I would say prior to being single, when I was dealing with someone, I had to end up, having a word, when it's too much, because this particular person was into play fighting. And I'm not a play fighter, but I was trying to, of course, people please, or I call it accommodating, because I thought maybe that's that person thing. They like to play fight. I don't know. But so I had to develop a code word, because that play fighting eventually always led to a more serious fight, because I'm not a person that play fights, and I can get defensive quickly. And I've also been through situations where certain spots where I'm hit is a trigger, and next thing I know, me and this person that I so-called him with, we are having literally brawls. And that was because we didn't use a code word. And what I mean by that, we also didn't even state boundaries. We didn't even state that. I should have stated from the beginning, play fighting wasn't allowed, period. Like, it's a trigger for me, and I shouldn't be running around play fighting with people anyways. But I'm just giving a scenario of situations that I was in with certain people, and how defensiveness brought me to a certain aspect that I wasn't thinking I would have to get to. And then these is how I started to dissolve that defensiveness, and these are the tools that I use. I now have safe words or code words, and they're even for myself, that I say mentally. Like, if I know a person has said something that's disrespectful, and I know I'm going to feel some way about it later and now, I'm going to speak up, and I'm going to tell myself a code word like, this is disrespectful. And that's going to make me speak up. So that's also another way to use code words to help yourself also vocal your boundaries and your opinions. Okay? I just want to throw out there, there's nothing wrong with play fighting. If you are a spouse or whatever, and you and your spouse play fight, y'all rough around, y'all wrestle, whatever, that's your thing. It's just, for me, I found that just wasn't best for me. And now let's move on to number 4, which is owning your behavior when you are defensive. So when you find yourself in a scenario where you're defensive, and someone that says something that has offended you, whether it's like the way you look, it's an insecurity they pointed out that, maybe they weren't aware that you had, or they did, and they did it on purpose. You have to always learn how to own your behavior and your actions, because you are what represent you. You are representing your character, and having people step you out of that character and out of that behavior is something very, very traumatic, because that's giving someone power over you. And that's really what people who are against you want. They want power over you. They want to know that they can affect you, affect your mind, affect your day, affect your task, affect your job, affect your schooling. They want to be an effect to you, because they're not an effect in their own life. So when you're in defensive mode, I would say even with a partner, maybe your partner pointed out something that was something you were insecure with. Instead of getting defensive, you can say, hey, I don't like that. This brought this insecurity, something I'm working on. Whatever. That's something you be communicative with your partner or a friend that you value. But when someone's just throwing targets at you and throwing nuggets, I literally start to just let that fly past me, because who are they? Mind your tune. That is a big one. And that one is for number 5. I put that as number 5 because your tone is literally everything. And I had to learn that, especially working in a call center environment, and thinking that people don't hear my voice of how my days reflected can definitely wake me up to knowing that they can. So once I started reeling in on that, I started paying attention to how I talk to others when I'm feeling some type of way, or if someone's defensive toward me and they make a comment toward me, how do I respond? Am I rebuttaling back? Am I being argumentative? Or am I just shutting the conversation down? And I feel like all of those are not the best tools. I feel like when it comes to minding your tune, if someone's defending you, you state your boundary, you state the disrespect, you state what you won't tolerate, and then you leave in peace. Or you leave the conversation at peace. And if they want to go back and forth, you tell them, there's no back and forth. I've already stated what was clear. If you're not respecting it, bounce, move around. whatever you want to say. But yeah, that's how you really need to do it, is minding your tune, because like I said, that is another way people want to get you out of character. Number 6 is practicing repairing. So what I mean by that is, no matter what, we're all going to get defensive when someone, and sometimes step out of character, sometimes say the wrong things, sometimes have the wrong tone, and sometimes have the wrong facial expressions. But owning up to it and then apologizing and being sincere and also understanding what you did wrong and explaining that, it also leads the situation in a better and stronger way, because not only does it show that you're accountable and your character is good, it also shows that you understand when you make wrongs and how to apologize to make it right. So people will believe you when you actually are doing something wrong and you really truly are apologetic for it, instead of just always thinking that you're right and being defensive. It's not going to really open up room for communication for others to really be vulnerable and express who they are as well. So with repairing is also being vulnerable and open about your insecurities or reasons why you're defensive or what emotions are tied to that defensiveness. That's why I said that communication is key, tone and the way you approach, as well as the way you handle your behavior, because that's what leads the conflict to a bad conflict and a good conflict. So definitely take these tools along with you guys. You know, I always leave it in the description box so you guys can reflect on yourself and see how you are showing up and see what you need to do to change. Don't forget to hit your subscription. Don't forget to hit the notification bell for all new videos. Like and share. Be blessed.